boy, we got a huge problem between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Saudi Arabia decided, there's a Shiite cleric we don't like. His name is Sheikh Nimr al-Nimr. Let's execute him. They claim, of course, as they always do, he aided and abetted terrorists. There was a protest, where, by the way, the Saudi government killed 20 protesters. But the protesters were the real problem because they were attacking police, and he somehow was involved. Nonsense. Nimr, the most vocal critic of the dynasty among the Shiite minority, had come to be seen as leader of the sect's younger activists who had tired of the failure of older, more measured leaders to achieve equality with Sunnis. So he's otherwise known as a loudmouth. Now, that's the Saudi government. To other people, most decent people in the world, he is a very legitimate protester of the Saudi government, which is open to a lot of protests for what they've done. Now, I'm not picking a side here. There's not a lot of Shiite clergy that I'd be interested in following. By not a lot, I mean zero. At the same time, there's not a lot of dictatorial Sunni governments like the Saudis that I'd be interested in following. So both sides have issues. You don't resolve those issues by beheading people unless you're Saudi Arabia or ISIS. So Saudi Arabia did. They didn't just execute him, they beheaded him. Okay, now when ISIS does it, I'm told that that's the biggest danger in the world. But when a U.S. ally does it, well, okay, let me tell you more about that. Here, this is from Reuters. Although most of the 47 men killed in the kingdom's biggest mass execution for decades were Sunnis convicted of al-Qaeda attacks in Saudi Arabia a decade ago, it was Nimr and 3 other Shiites, all accused of involvement in shooting police, who attracted the most attention in the region and beyond. When you have to start a sentence with the biggest mass execution in decades, you know things aren't going to end well. So now the Shiite, which are dominant obviously in Iran, and then also dominant in Iraq, by the way, and a lot of Shiites in Yemen. That's why Saudi Arabia has a war with Yemen right now. It got involved in the middle of their civil war, and now obviously there's a Shiite minority in Saudi Arabia. But the people that the Shiites turn to most often is Iran, and Hassan Rouhani is the president of Iran, and he said what the Saudis did was, quote, inhuman. Now, that's very mild compared to the rest of what you're about to see, and Rouhani is a moderate as the president of Iran, within the context of Iran, obviously. The Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani, who is the Grand Ayatollah in Iraq, is also considered more moderate as far as Grand Ayatollahs go, said it was, quote, an unjust aggression. Okay, now we move to the Iranian government. Overall, they say it will cost Saudi Arabia dearly. Syed Hassan Nasrallah, the head of a Lebanese militia called Hezbollah, who is also Shiite, said that they will see, the Saudis will, a message of blood. The Revolutionary Guards, that is the militant part of the Iranian military, said that they will look for, quote, harsh revenge. And they said the Saudi government, this pro-terrorist, anti-Islamic regime, will of course pay some sort of price. Well, what kind of price? Well, now we go to the Grand Ayatollah in Iran. He is Ali Khamenei, and he writes in, or said, quote, this unjustly spilled blood of this oppressed martyr will no doubt soon show its effect, and divine vengeance will befall Saudi politicians. And lo and behold, after all those words, a lot of armed protesters showed up at the Saudi embassy in Tehran, Iran. So we pick it up from there. Iranian protesters stormed the Saudi embassy in Tehran early on Sunday, and Shiite Iran's top leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, predicted divine vengeance for the execution of Sheikh Nimr al-Nimr, who is an outspoken opponent of the ruling al-Saudi family, or he was. So, oh, you execute a Shiite cleric? Okay, we come in and burn down your embassy. Now, the embassy's not completely burned down, but they came in, ransacked it, and lit fires in the embassy. So obviously that's a bit of an issue. Now, the moderate president of Iran did arrest 44 people, said that was unacceptable. You can't do that. Haven't heard much condemnation from the Grand Ayatollah yet, who's actually more powerful than the president in Iran. So they do have a very complicated power sharing arrangement there between the clergy and the politicians. Okay. Now we go to the Saudi reaction to their embassy being burnt. We go to Foreign Minister Adel al-Jubeir. He says the kingdom, in light of these realities, meaning the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, announces the cutting of diplomatic relations with Iran and requests the departure of delegates of diplomatic missions of the embassy and consulate and offices related to it within 48 hours. In other words, clean up, go home. So they kicked out the Iranian embassy. Well, when they're not talking anymore and they're burning each other's embassies down, and you already have a horrible brewing Sunni Shiite war in Iraq, which got started. When did it get started? Oh, right, when we invaded Iraq. Now, look, Sunnis and the Shiites have been fighting for hundreds of years, over 1,000 years. We didn't start that fire. But recently, there were no huge Sunni Shiite upheavals and civil wars until we went into Iraq, and we had this brilliant idea. Why don't we topple Saddam Hussein, and then we'll have a democracy there, and who will win in a democracy? Oh, right, Iraq is 60% Shiite. The Shiites will win. Who will be their natural ally? Iran. Oh, we don't like Iran, and we don't like Hezbollah, and Iran funds Hezbollah, which fights against Israel oftentimes. Oh, and then the Sunnis will be super mad, and they were the entire Iraqi army, and they'll want to fight back against the Shiites. And then maybe that'll spread to neighboring countries like Syria. Oh, damn, that's exactly what happened. So now we have this conflagration where literally the world is on fire, which brings us all the way back to Iraq. Reuters explains, in Iraq, whose Shiite-led government is close to Iran, religious and political figures demanded that ties with the Riyadh be severed. Riyadh is the capital of Saudi Arabia, calling into question Saudi attempts to forge a regional alliance against the Islamic State, which controls swaths of Iraq and Syria. So not only is this a disaster between Iran and Saudi Arabia, let alone all the proxy wars like in Yemen, but now all these folks are not necessarily looking to hold hands and fight against ISIS. So the fight against ISIS is also weakened. Wonderful. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse. So that's the current state of the Middle East. Oh, by the way, what's our answer to all this? Well, the Saudis are, of course, right, because they're our allies. We've got to fight ISIS who beheads people, but ISIS Saudi Arabia who beheads people is wonderful. In fact, Carly Fiorina, a Republican who thinks she's running for president, right? Saudi Arabia is our ally, despite the fact that they don't always behave in a way that we condone. In other words, yeah, get beyond it. So what? They're our ally. They give us cheap oil. They behead people. They do mass executions. Who cares? Ben Carson has a better answer. He also thinks he's running for president. He says the Saudis have been one of our strongest allies in the Middle East, and I think it's unfortunate that we put them in a position we have by showing the support to Iran that we have with this foolish deal. That's a deal where we were able to get rid of Iran's nuclear program, so those people, the Grand Ayatollah who's looking for blood now, doesn't have nuclear weapons to play around with. I would call that a rare victory in the Middle East. Ben Carson says, well, you see that caused the Saudis to behead some Shiites. What? What does that have anything to do with it? In other words, he's saying we as in the Obama administration, made the Saudis behead those guys because we made a peace deal with Iran where we took nuclear weapons away. I mean, you want to talk about being an apologist for Saudi terrorism? I think that's a pretty good definition of it right there. Okay. Can we please stop giving weapons to both sides? Can we at least do that at a bare minimum? So far, the answer is no, and the world continues to be on fire.